Welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Erik Harrell. I'm the CEO of Keystone Education Group, and welcome to the Keystone Education Group Fireside Chat podcast. I want to welcome Sven Schütt, the CEO of IU University of Applied Sciences in Germany. Super excited to chat with Sven today. And the purpose of this podcast, just generally speaking, is there's a lot of change, innovation, a transformation going on in higher ed. And the purpose is really to interview those leaders who are driving that innovation, driving that change, being change agents. And I think the story of what Sven has achieved over the last 10 years at IU is extremely interesting. He's definitely a big innovator in the space. And he's built the university up from 1,000 students to over 85,000 over 10 years. And he's got some very big goals. He wants to be the largest university in the world. So this is definitely going to be a very interesting discussion. Before I start, before asking Sven to talk a little bit about his background, maybe Sven, welcome, and maybe you could start with telling us a little bit and telling the audience a little bit more about IU University of Applied Sciences, facts and figures and mission, and that sort of thing, just so people are kind of grounded on your university, which is the largest university in Germany.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Erik, for having me, and I'm happy to do so. So our vision is that everybody can access education to grow, and we try to achieve this with the most learner-centric education, in particular by leveraging technology. And to fulfill this vision, we have developed over the last 10 years the largest European edtech player with more than 3,000 colleagues, and as you said, the largest German university with 85,000 students, as well as the largest corporate apprenticeship network with more than 10,000 corporate partners. And at the same time, we also offer the largest degree portfolio globally with more than 300 English and German language degrees. And the key for us is that we try to offer the most personalized learning experience for broad target groups ranging from high school leavers to working adults, with which is at the heart of what we do, our edtech platform, delivering the richest experience in terms of synchronous and asynchronous structured and more flexible learning options for these target groups across all our offerings.
Okay, I definitely want to dive. We're definitely going to dive deeper into what you guys have done and how you've achieved this tremendous growth, and also talk about how you intend to be the largest university in the world. But before we get there, I think the biggest question I have is, how big do you need to be the largest university in the world? I think we need to put some numbers out there. So what is the BHAG, big hairy blank goal?
Yeah, the BHAG is to enroll more than 1 million students on an annual basis. Currently, Indira Gandhi University in India is the largest university globally, and there's still a couple of years to go and grow for us.
Yeah, I love BHAGs. I love the boldness that you guys have, and as I said, it's really impressive what you guys have achieved. I think again, just continue on the lines of your university, and I think it's great that folks have a good background now, a little bit of a background on university, but perhaps you could talk a little bit about how you guys are different than other universities, what market segments you guys are targeting, and kind of what your USPs are, what your unique selling points are. How do you differentiate? How is IU different than your competition?
Yeah, as mentioned, we try to deliver the best and most personalized learning experience to promote the individual career progression in the best way. And as said, we focus on both high school leavers as well as working adults. And for instance, for high school leavers, we developed a very unique offering which combines study and work. So we recruit both the student as well as the corporate partner. We put the two together, and thereby we make it possible for those young high school leavers to get the best personal learning pathway towards future skills that are relevant, which are not only kind of the conceptual skills you learn in study, but also the skills you have to master in this real work environment. And likewise for our working adults who are working in this real life environment, we provide the best learning environment that is tailored to the very, very broad requirements students have, in the sense of that we have both the synchronous and asynchronous option. Students can learn between a pure online, a blended format. They can choose from the largest degree portfolio and also choose what is the best exam format for them. And thereby we really take each person as an individual to optimize their learning, and we don't kind of turn it the other way around as many of the traditional learning offerings do, that it's just kind of the one size fits all for everybody. And this is what we believe the key to personal career progression and success, and that is what sets us apart from many of the other traditional offerings.
Okay, so we're gonna we're gonna talk more about this and do a deeper dive on this and really understand. I think it'd be interesting to talk more details about this. But before we get there, I think I'm always interested in hearing about people's journeys, and I'd love to hear your journey and your background and how kind of your path to being the CEO of IU. How did you get interested in education and leadership? Was there something about your upbringing? I think it'd be interesting just to tell people a little bit about the journey till today and what just sort of the path that you've taken till today.
So first of all, I never intended to become a CEO. However, I've been luckily brought up in an environment in which learning has always been a very important part of my life, and I always have been interested not only in learning myself but learning how learning is working. And then I started with a plan to become a faculty person or professor, and did my PhD in neuroscience and data science. However, then I realized this is not the right level for me to contribute to this society. Not knowing what I should do, I joined McKinsey. And however, I was lucky that I was able to participate in the biggest public sector reform of the German Public Employment Agency, the so-called Bundesagentur für Arbeit. And then I moved over to the kind of public service and headed this reform as the responsible managing director. And while doing so, I realized that really providing the opportunity for everybody to access education is something that is a challenge for all societies. And so I intended to set up my own edtech company 2008. And who remembers 2008? Suddenly I lost funding overnight, as many other people experienced back at that time. And so I joined IU in 2010, when it was a brick and mortar institution of around 1,000 students, as you already mentioned. And it's been a great journey since then. I'm really grateful that I was able to build this up together with our great team.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that when we spoke last week, in preparation for this, one of the things that you spoke a lot about, which you spoke about now, was of course equal access to education, and that one of the things that was kind of motivated you was seeing in German society that there were a lot of people, like if you're wealthy in Germany, like in many societies, if you're wealthy, it's much easier for you to get the right education or get access to education, that kind of thing. And one of the things you were saying was that you really wanted to make sure that Germans, I mean, initially your focus was Germany, you've obviously expanded outside Germany. One thing that was really motivating you was to really, help those who weren't not as fortunate as you, enable them to access education. And one thing you also talked a lot about was this ambition to bring education and your platform to all corners of the globe, and in sort of more of the emerging markets. And one sort of initiative which I've found really compelling, that I think would be interesting for people to hear about, is your initiative in Africa, the Study Access Alliance Africa initiative. And perhaps could you just talk a little bit about what the mission is and what you're trying to accomplish and why you're spearheading it, and yeah, what's really needed to pull this, to make it happen?
Thanks a lot for asking, Eric. And this is the initiative that at least I'm personally most excited about. And as you say, if you're rich and from a well-off background, it is easy. And kind of the African continent overall is perhaps seeing the largest challenge in terms of education in total and higher education in particular. So just to bring Africa to a world average of university enrollment, and given all the population growth in this continent, the higher education system needs to expand roughly 6 times until 2030, which is incredible from any perspective, politics perspective, but just on the ground perspective as well. And what we aim to do with this initiative is to contribute to the expansion and leveraging what we have built. So our idea is that we seek a partnership so that we gain stipends of 1,000 euro per student, and we top this up roughly by times 10, given our capacity, and thereby offer 100,000 students for a start to get access to high quality education. And we decided that we want to start with, on the one hand, tech degrees, and on the other hand, female students, given that we believe by this focus we can add most value on the one hand to an underserved part of those communities, as well as on the economic side. There's so much potential across Africa when it comes to tech. And in case any listener is interested in it, feel free to reach out to me afterwards, and I'm happy to share more about this initiative.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great initiative, obviously, and as you were saying, the number of seats available, the demand for education in Africa is huge relative to supply. And that's, of course, the beauty of online education, is that it's unlimited. It's like almost like unlimited capacity. And we also know that, in terms of transforming Africa economically, we know education is the key to that. So definitely a big fan of this initiative to transform the continent. So I think, clearly with that goal to be more than 1 million enrolled students, obviously emerging markets are critical, and so obviously this is, Africa will play an important role in that growth and reaching that BHAG. I just want to one of the things I want to try to do is, we kind of have I think we have a good idea now of kind of what your goals are and high level how you've achieved the success. And I think one of the things I'd like to do now is, for the benefit of the audience, is dig a little bit deeper into exactly what you're doing. Because one of the things that you've talked about when we spoke was the focus on the customer, and the focus on the customer, on personalization, and on scalability. And you were talking about this in the context of, traditional universities and what they're focused on and what their mission is and what they historically have focused on. So I think if you could talk a little bit about how you contrast yourselves with the traditional universities. And I think one thing you've clearly done, you talk about the 97% customer satisfaction rate, which is obviously very impressive. So you're doing a lot of things right. But I think it would be great is if you could just talk a little bit about, in more detail, what you're specifically doing around customer centricity, around personalization, and scalability, because those are 3 themes that we spoke about.
Yeah. So the university value chain is one of the most complex value chains, at least in the B2C offerings, and hence it is really something when you have the customer in mind, where there's not the single source of truth or not the single point that really optimizes the full offering, but we rather have to walk through all of those very complex steps of the value chain, starting with the content development, kind of then the customer enrollment process, the learning delivery, and managing the outcome. So unfortunately, there's not a single secret sauce, but it's really innovating all those steps with the customer in mind, getting all the data points that are relevant, trying to do experiments. We did and do a lot of experience on all those steps in the value chain to really find out what is the best way to serve our learners. And then based on the data, you can optimize this. And maybe just kind of one example on the content production side, we are by far, to our knowledge, the university that launches most online degree on an annual basis. So this year we will have, or more or less have already, given the year's over, launched 100 new online degrees. And we can only do so at scale, given that we have really developed also kind of a service creation factory at high quality to deliver this and integrate all data around what are relevant future skills, what are current students, alumni, and future students interested in, how is kind of the overall labor market evolving, and thereby then creating this content creation in a way, content in a way that it can be delivered across this platform. And yeah, and this is at least key in everything you do. And when I, also knowing kind of more traditional institutions, doing so with quality and scale in mind is based on this data is something that most other universities are not kind of really focusing on, but they have a very bespoke way for, let's say, each subject, or each subject, or different learning formats, and integrating this within one platform is, at least from our perspective, key to really deliver something like this at high quality. And so, kind of to sum it up, one can say we technologized higher education, and thereby we believe made it better, made it more personalized, and hence it is not a kind of one-to-one relationship anymore, but it is an experience our learners or students have, where many people contribute, and not just the kind of faculty person who teaches the course.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, I mean, in terms of the leaders that I've been interviewing on the podcast, I'd say pretty much across the board, and these are innovators, the ones I'm speaking to, like yourself. There's a clear focus on taking a market-based approach, of course, to developing the curriculum. And I know, and I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know in a number of the cases of folks I've been interviewing, leaders, presidents, CEOs of universities, deans, that they are very focused on employment outcomes, salary outcomes. They measure their success in terms of, the percentage of their students who graduate and have a job soon afterwards. And that does seem to be, I mean, I was speaking with a college president, and that's something that I think that's really quite a big change, is this focus on the customer and the outcomes. So it's
absolutely. I mean, and that is what we do as well. For us, maybe 2 points to this. On the one hand, all our models are built in employment, also for our high school leavers. We directly manage that our high school leavers start their employment and thereby get the best experience, our working adults by definition. And then for us, the key is career progression, because everybody is employed. And measuring this career progression is what we try to optimize our content and degrees and delivery upon. However, also to share this, and I think this is one of the biggest challenges for education as a whole, and we haven't cracked this nut as well, is that career progression is always coming with a delay, and hence it is a challenge for every educator to develop kind of the future-oriented curriculum that anticipates our life and our work in, I don't know, 5 to 10 years down the road. But there is knowledge that you can incorporate, and that you should try to incorporate to really be as forward-looking as possible.
So when you're thinking about talking about outcomes that we're talking about now, you mean one of the things you mentioned to me was this 97% customer satisfaction rate, which is of course super high. What are the KPIs that you track along the way to ensure that you have such a high customer satisfaction rating, and also that you have good outcomes for students? What are some of those key measures that you track?
I mean, there are many important measures. On the one hand, is indeed not just customer satisfaction or net promoter score is a key measure for everything we do. There are also measures in terms of kind of the quality assurance for each of those processes being, I don't know, satisfaction with the live teaching, satisfaction with the services you get, and actually assessment whether a student actually has progressed in their skills. So you can also measure skill progression, which we do, and thereby for each key part of this value chain of given that we have this Tayloristic approach, you can try to define a KPI, and that is not only forward looking, as we just discussed on the career progression, but much closer, and thereby just rely on the student and their kind of also self-assessment, whether what they learn actually they think it will help them. It is at least one of the key starting points if there is nothing else available. And so integrating all these different KPIs in a meaningful way for each of those steps in the value chain is what we try to do. And I think that is driving us to innovate based on this data.
Again, I mean, with such a high customer satisfaction rating, you're obviously doing something right, clearly, very right. With your teaching methods, the educational tools you're using. And I think it would be really interesting to just hear what, maybe if you could be more concrete, sort of what is a typical week in the life of an IU student? What educational tools are they using? What software programs are they using? What teaching methods are being employed by professors?
First of all, there is no typical IU student, given that we have such a broad range of different people. However, ranging from high school leavers to actually old age. I looked it up for us. So our oldest student is now close to 80, which is a little bit unusual, but it's just a person who decided to study with us. Less with a kind of career focus in mind, but still loved obviously to develop further. However, let's talk about traditional working adult students who are the majority of all our students who has a regular work week. And for this target group, our students, they would normally participate in live tutorials in the evening or live interactive lectures in the evening. And on top of this, those students will leverage our app at other times of the day, for instance, while commuting. People are not commuting anymore, but if they would, given that they sometimes go back to office now. On top of it, they can ask questions anytime in our course feed, and all those solutions, however, are kind of bespoke, developed by us. So it is kind of not something off the shelf, but those are the customer-centric developments. And on top of it, they can decide to write an exam anytime, 24/7, online and immediately. So many of our students make use of this opportunity, in particular at weekends, but any other odd times that just fits their, on the one hand, kind of concentration high best, but also their schedule. We also have people even in Central Europe who take exams at 1 o'clock in the morning for whatever reasons I don't know of, but that's just what they do. And that is kind of the breadth how our students can learn on a typical whatever week.
Okay, that's helpful. So I think it's pretty clear you guys have had tremendous success. I mean, the growth has been absolutely incredible. And I think one of the things I learned a long time ago is that you can have the best product and service in the world, but it doesn't guarantee that people are going to come. So I mean, you guys have clearly are delivering a fantastic service to your customers, and they're reacting to that with very high ratings, and then of course you're enrolling more students. There are some people on this call who, or many people on this call who are going to be interested, of course, also in how you've been able to recruit students. So what have been sort of the most effective ways for you guys to actually market your service, your educational, your platform? What have been the best channels for that? How have you gone about doing it? What's been your approach?
So key in having a successful product is that you have a very good product market fit, and that is what we always try to do. So just to have the best offering for our students. So roughly 40% of our students are coming, also for all those online marketeers amongst us, from non-paid channels, which can be referral or whatever organic channels, and simply by having the best, and in some cases kind of the only offering that really fits the interest of the students is key. However, beyond this, we also try to provide the best kind of onboarding for our students. It is studying, in particular for working adults, is one of the most challenging and actually not only costly but also time-consuming decisions you have to do, and thereby give our potential students a very good insight into how they learn with us and how this works. Being very transparent around this is key. And then, in terms of recruitment, we obviously use kind of the obvious online marketing channels. I'm not sure whether somebody from Google is on this call, but as every other education institutions, also we make Google rich. But we also recruit with our partners like you, who are for us a very important part, given that platforms that offer a wide range of education offerings are for us a very important part, given that we just have such a positive offering where people then in the end find us and choose us.
That's helpful, and I think there's, I think as I mentioned, there are, in terms of the audience, there are a lot of folks in the audience who are presidents, deans, CEOs of all the universities, and I mean, what advice would you give them? I mean, learnings from your success. What advice would you give them in terms of, because there are a lot of universities out there that are are traditional, right? They've been traditional universities. It's been on campus experience. We know that a lot of universities are expanding, into online pretty proactively. What would be some of your top 3 bits of advice you'd give them, coming at it from a traditional university and launching an online educational program? What would be some advice you'd give them?
So number one, and that is a little bit difficult, I'm aware of this for a traditional university, is however, set it up in a separate organizational unit. That is also what we did, because traditional university, both faculty as well as other environments, are so different from a truly student-centered online experience. So if you have the opportunity, that is at least the most important advice I can give. And then secondly, you need to have a very good customer-centric, not only tech team, but kind of overall team who is willing to innovate with the customer in mind. It sounds easier than it's done, given the challenges of university regulation and so on. So you really need to have people that yes, can think within this regulatory regime, but also are able to think out of the box and make this work under university regulation. That's number 2. And number 3, really be able to kind of innovate and see every mistake as the path to success. It's like us, we've built this over 10 years. It didn't work from day one, at least not at the level that we currently are able to deliver both quality as well as very high satisfaction and outcome. So you need to have a longer timeline. And you obviously also need to communicate this to your whomever, shareholder, stakeholder, that it's not going to be built in 12 months, but you need to innovate, simply given the complexity of the value chain, and have kind of the breadth and the length, and then also the means to do it.
Maybe this is a good opportunity for you to talk a little bit about your white label program, right? You have if I recall from our chat, you can act as an OPM, right? You can actually accelerate the path for traditional universities to launch online programs. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what you're doing in that area, because I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, thanks. So we decided roughly in the beginning of this year to actually fulfill our vision faster and better, that we also offer what we have developed to other both universities as well as employers as well as other educators across the world. We are not a traditional OPM, but we, in the sense of that, we do kind of bespoke things, but we partner with other universities in a number of ways, so that universities can leverage our platform and use this to expand their, on the one hand, online offering, but also degree offering, given that we have this wide range, in particular in future skills topic like AI, data science, UX, and cybersecurity, kind of all those evolving topics which we continue to expand. And just for, so we do so for, as said, for universities, but we also do so for employers. For instance, we just recently set up kind of a white or co-label corporate university with the Deutsche Bahn. It's kind of the biggest one of the biggest German companies with 300,000 employers, and a number of other players. So the corporate players, where we again can integrate what we do with the corporate training offering. And we think this is a great opportunity, on the one hand, to really make our capabilities available to a wider range of potential learners, and on the other hand, it helps particular universities and likewise educators to not to reinvent the wheel, but tap into our 10-year experience. And kind of, again, if anybody's interested, feel free to reach out to me, and we are happy to help.
Yeah, that's great. Definitely on the minds of or it should be on the minds of every president, CEO, dean of every university in the world, which is, how to move online. It's a big opportunity, and for them as a thinking about from a business standpoint, but it's also a great opportunity to educate more people. So it's about expanding the market for higher education. One thing I always like to I ask, it's just to segue into this, is I'm always interested in sort of because I'm speaking to CEOs, leaders like yourselves, and there are many leaders, academic leaders on the call. It would be great to just hear a little bit about what a typical week is for you, although maybe it's not so typical, but what a typical week might be, how you spend your time, and what you think makes for a great CEO of a educational institution, and kind of what your leadership mantras are. It'd be great to just kind of hear your thoughts on leadership. It's certainly an interest of mine. I know many on the call.
I'm happy to share, and given that I also graduated in philosophy a while ago, I think the key for any great leader is kind of to be aware that kind of the Socrates insight that I know that I don't know anything, and that's kind of the way to start. And secondly, be aware that it's always other people and the team who makes the difference, and hence you need to build the best team that you can build and foster it within the best culture. And thirdly, to find the best balance for your business between living in the future but also being firmly grounded in the daily operations, as every leader might know, and not being dragged down too much, but also taking care of the business in a meaningful sense. And what I, for instance, do every week is kind of to reflect, do I kind of find this balance right, and what do I need to reshuffle again? So that is at least my top 3 kind of mantras or advices I can give.
And I'm really interested in this, and I get asked this question as well myself. But how do you spend your time? Where do you spend most of your time during the week? I mean, if you look at your schedule, besides doing a podcast with Keystone, I mean, how else are you spending your time?
So it has changed dramatically since COVID. Obviously, I now spend my time in these kind of Zoom rooms, while beforehand I had a much tougher travel schedule. But I try to really interact on the one hand, with our various business lines, also in a deep way. So I believe in great leaders to find a good balance between going broad and going deep. So no, you really need to be on top of the key initiatives that you think contribute to your business outcome, and obviously on the other hand, try to spend also as much time getting insights from your partners as well as customers, and that is at least how I try to balance my time.
That's great. It's always interesting to hear from other CEOs on how they spend their time. I'm gonna take some questions from the audience in a minute, but there's one other question that I wanted to ask before doing so. I'd be curious to know, what will IU look like in 10 years? Just describe IU in 10 years.
As said, we at least recruit more than 1 million students. However, what I particularly believe will change is the way we deliver education. The biggest change that we are kind of trying to work upon will be that teaching will not happen as we are used to today, but there will be, in 10 years' time, teaching a very elaborate teaching bot that might be much better than today to really personalize education in a much more meaningful fashion, and thereby really accompany our learners not only kind of in a more formal learning setup, but also kind of across the day, to just provide feedback, provide learning nudges, and thereby really make learning a part of everyday life experience, and in a way that no faculty and no traditional teaching format could ever deliver.
Okay, so let me just get to some. Thank you. Let me get to some questions, and I have more, but I feel like I should jump on some questions. So I'm just going to read them. One here from Thomas. What are the completion rates, and if possible, by broad discipline categories: natural/life sciences, social sciences, etc.?
So for us, it makes more sense not to do by categories, but rather by formats. So for instance, our high school leavers have graduation rates of around 70%. And for our working adults, it differs between master and bachelor. So for master, we are around the same level. For bachelor, we are a little bit lower there. We're around 50%. However, who is aware of self-paced working adult online formats, we are there kind of top of class, given the big challenges we have, at least our learners have to kind of balance everything.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And then we have a question from Kareem. Any experience with offering medical or health sciences programs at IU Online, and how do you overcome regulatory and practical clinical requirements?
Unfortunately not. We have some, we're not offering currently medical, as a medicine, so to say, and also on the health side, we focus currently on the kind of non-practical degree parts. So I cannot really help with this.
But but on this point, do you see yourselves getting into offering medical degrees and nursing degrees and getting into the healthcare field? Because I mean, it's a massive industry. We know that, the healthcare industry. So.
That is so, and yes, we have this on our kind of midterm roadmap. However, we are aware that at least kind of a medical degree in itself will require significant practical experience that cannot be delivered fully online. And I guess at least now, I guess there's no one in the audience who wants to be treated by a medical person who completely learned everything online. However, we looked at it actually. There are a significant fraction also of a medical curriculum that is possible to deliver online. Also, kind of the anatomical part of it is there are also now very good AR VR solutions. So there is a huge kind of benefit that also those study programs can have from a better blended experience, but it's simply currently not feasible to do this fully online for a number of reasons.
Yeah, but you guys of course offer both, right? You offer the hybrid, the online and like on campus So I guess you guys could be set up for it, but it's not something you're focused on right now.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Amina. The question is, today the university, I guess her university is struggling with, I guess, between benchmarking, ranking internationally, and working with a local environment. How can a university balance those things?
The sad thing about ranking international is that most of those rankings are not focusing on student outcome and career progression of students, but rather on research. And hence, I personally believe those rankings are a little bit broken. There is obviously, a value for research institutions, but a great researcher is not a great teacher. There are some who combine this, but it's, also having done research myself, it is simply very, very different competencies that do not need to go together. And hence, I do not have an easy answer how to balance this. I can just say that I think it's important for an institution to be clear what the priorities are. For us, it is helping students to grow and not exceeding international research rankings. I think doing both kind of top of class is more or less impossible. So I can only suggest that an institution should kind of choose one or the other, and not try to do both at the same time.
Interesting. How do you, I mean, what would you like to see? I mean, for one thing, I mean, you've kind of answered this to some extent, but how do you guys, I mean, how do you focus on rankings? And two, how should rankings change? I mean, if you could come up with a new formula, what criteria would you use?
So
how you'd weight those different things? I'd be interested.
Yeah. So we focus on, we focus in terms of rankings, and there are some on kind of student satisfaction rankings, and they're not that well on career outcome, because it's, I guess, more challenging to really get good data on it. However, and career outcome is not just kind of the overall success of a student, but actually the improvement of their career given where they started, and that is not easy to measure, and there are not that many good measures currently available. And so that is where we focus on, and I would love to see that there will be more kind of rankings that focus actually on the kind of student satisfaction, progression, and outcome, and in the end also that students realize that this is what they are looking for, and this is what they should choose. And as you see with us, many students are aware of this, and that is why they choose us, and likewise institutions. Yeah. But this is, I'm not sure whether Times Higher Education or other rankings will change in the near future.
Yeah, but it's an interesting perspective. Of course, it makes sense. Is student outcomes, are clearly important. I mean, that's what you're paying for, right? I mean,
yeah,
you're going to school to end up with a good job. I mean, that's why we're going to school.
Exactly, and research output has nothing to do with it. So it is actually amazing that we end up with the rankings that we have. It's just kind of traditional, but I've never met any person who truly believed that a great researcher is always it's the necessary condition for a great teacher. It's simply there's different skills and they can come together, but they don't necessarily have to go together.
Okay, no, it's great. This is a rankings. It's a really interesting topic, yeah, it seems like there's some opportunity for transformation there to some extent, at least. We have some more questions from Kareem. Just kind of a couple of them. He's asking about cross geography accreditation challenges and how IU overcomes them. That's one question. I can go to the next one after you've addressed that one.
Yes, I mean, we started to also accredit all our kind of German accredited English language degrees under the UK regime. Yes, there are always challenges to do so. However, if you have a competency-based, forward-looking curriculum, for us, it worked very well. And I mean, that is obviously something where you need to where this rich personalization helped us to do so, and hence it is a little difficult for me to comment on other parts, but having this flexibility and broad teaching methods, as well as the future skills and competency orientation, helped us to overcome those challenges.
Okay. Another question from Kareem. Are there research opportunities open at IU? Do you see IU faculty getting enough traction when it comes to grants and research collaboration? That's this.
We do not have pure research faculty. We focus with us on faculty who love and like teaching, but on the side they also do research. However, focusing on applied research, because we believe this this applied research contributes most to our teaching quality, and that is how we are set up.
Could you talk? Maybe you could talk a little bit about, this is something we spoke about last week. You talked maybe a little bit about how your faculty set up and the breakdown between sort of full-time and sort of non-full-time, and sort of your approach and how that links in with your curriculum and curriculum development.
Yeah. So obviously, given that we have and do reinvent our teaching methods, a key kind of requirement for our colleagues in the faculty is that they like kind of this innovation, and also like this change, knowing that this is not always easy for each and every person, but that innovating teaching is part of what we do, and hence we are looking for colleagues in our faculty who also like this. And for instance, if you apply with us as a faculty person, then for a faculty position, the first thing is you hand in alongside everything else, but also a video lecture, so that we see that you feel comfortable with this format. And that faculty has more the role of a coach in this online environment than a traditional face-to-face teaching experience. We still have this, but also this face-to-face is in a blended format, so it always needs to be integrated with all the tools and opportunities that we have. And our faculty, on top of it, has always 5 years of practical experience. We believe that this makes a lot of sense, given that we educate not for research careers, but we educate for kind of the work environment out there. And hence we also have roughly half of our faculty that is actually only kind of a 50% half-time faculty with us, and has another occupation in the real life, whatever that is, beyond teaching, and thereby has the opportunity to also participate directly in new trends, developments in their area of expertise.
Okay, that's helpful. So I'm just again going down the list of questions, and thank you everyone for your questions. I have a question here from Ibrahim. Which countries do you expect to be growing in the next 5 years when it comes to online degrees? What do you think are the top market growth opportunities from a geographic perspective for IU?
As mentioned with our study Access Alliance in Africa, we believe kind of the African continent, in particular, kind of the large countries in Africa, given the supply-demand challenge of higher education there we will see in total the largest growth. Nigeria is the largest country population-wise in Africa, and hence we believe this will be one of the largest countries, but also Southeast Asia, India, simply from a similar perspective, population growth as well as demand for high quality education is just very, very large, and hence in those places we believe that we also see the largest growth in terms of online degrees in the next couple of years.
Sort of a follow-on question from Ibrahim, because my understanding is that you guys focus on degrees, right? How about certificates? I mean, are you short certificates? You know, like a certificate in data science, or I mean, is that an area of? Is that something you guys are in currently? If not, do you have plans to get into sort of that area?
Good question. I left this out to minimize complexity. However, we have built our whole curriculum in a way that it's stackable, so that we also offer the opportunity for students to start with us with a shorter course. We call those nano degrees or diplomas, and then progress kind of smoothly whenever they feel it fits with their own objectives towards a full degree if they want to, but they don't have to. We offer this in Germany already, and we are in the process of also rolling this out to other places. But we also, in particular, have started to offer this in partnerships with other institutions for whom this is relevant, and see that this stackability in a fully integrated degree platform is something that is really also a key part of personalizing education in a way. Not everybody, at least not today, wants to commit to a full degree, but having the optionality to progress to a degree is an important part for many of our potential learners, and that is why we have built this in a stackable fashion.
Got it. No, it's a very interesting area. We obviously see more employers open to taking folks with certificates versus a full degree. It's an interesting area for the future. We have a question from James. Do student clients ask what accreditation or accrediting bodies your degrees have?
As a kind of not in Germany, because we are so well known. We are the largest university in Germany, and kind of there's a relatively clear setup. Obviously, when it comes to other places in the world, it gets more complicated, and hence, yes, there we are asked now and then, and this is one of the challenges of the kind of very fragmented different regulatory schemes you have in education across the globe, and that is also why we have started to build a multinational accreditation platform in which we aim to, as we already have the UK as well as the German accreditation, aim to add additional regional accreditation where it adds value to our students.
Yeah, because one of the things, my understanding, you're also expanding into new geographies, right? So you're getting into France, Germany, and UK. Those are the three next growth markets.
Germany, we already know. Spain,
Right.
Spain. So good, good, Eric. No, Spain. So in principle, we offer what we do across the globe, but we will come. We will get more meaningful into those three large European countries, and there. Currently, we operate under the assumption, and we see that it works, that we have this UK-German accreditation. Obviously, those are two European countries with a well-established education system, and that seems to resonate also in countries like Spain and France. However, we realize that, and that is what we are currently also doing, kind of localize also our degree language, so that we also offer degrees then in Spanish and French, just to make it possible for those target students to learn in their mother tongue, because like in Germany, that is why we have many German degrees. It is always a challenge to learn in a foreign language.
Okay, so just some more questions here. We have a question here from Mary, and she's asking about, she said she wanted the sound wasn't clear for whatever reason. She'd like to hear more about how you're recruiting students. What's worked the best for you when it comes to recruiting students onto your platform?
So Mary, kind of the key point that I mentioned is that you need to have a very, very good product market fit. And that is why we have around 40% of our students starting with us from what we call kind of unpaid channels. However, elsewise, the one key channel for us, as for every other education institution, I believe, is Google to some extent, but also cooperation partners like what Erik is doing and heading. So kind of big platforms where there is a broad range of potential offerings, and given that we have a very attractive and broad offering for many students, these kind of agglomerating platforms are for us a very important recruitment channel, in particular on the international side.
Okay, and then we have another question from Mary. So hope that, another question from Mary, just a follow-up question, and I'll kind of just sort of paraphrase it. But she's what she's asking about is sort of the teaching methodology, and she's talking about the fact that the teaching's changed. Where historically it's been more of the teacher in charge, more lecture format. And now, what she's seeing is that students are being more autonomous, and the teacher's there to support them. There's more independence among students. And she just was asking about I guess ultimately your philosophy and your perspective on teaching. What is the IU teaching philosophy on the role of the teacher versus the role of the student?
So learning is, as I completely agree with you, Mary, in the sense of learning is a personalized endeavor or personal endeavor, and a teacher is not a person who kind of fills knowledge in your head, but is a coach who enables this learning journey when necessary. And I mean, also being father of kids, it is really sad to see how schools kind of force all pupils to learn the same stuff at the same time, in the same pace. And this is not how people learn. And hence, we try to put the student in the center, in the sense of that he or she can decide both what they want to learn, when they will learn it, how they learn it, and have the teacher only when it's necessary to intervene and help and guide the learning. Obviously, there's also a motivational component for some of our students. They just need to have a more structured format, otherwise that they cannot master it. But also this should be done in a willing way and shouldn't be forced. We're talking about adult people, and adults are adult enough to decide what they want to learn and how they do this, and shouldn't be forced by others as long as it's not necessary.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thanks for that. We have one final question from Liadi, and he's the person is asking about how they can contact you. I would like to contact Sven directly to discuss a potential partnership. So what's the best way for...
Just contact me on LinkedIn. So I think you find my name. It's relatively, there are not that many people called Sven Schütt and at IU, and contact me maybe just as a few sentences around kind of this podcast, and then we take it from there. And happy to contact whomever wants to.
We're coming up to the end, unfortunately. This has been a really interesting discussion. Is there any sort of parting words, any sort of words of wisdom you'd like to pass on, or other thoughts to the listeners?
Words of wisdom is a little bit over exaggerated. However, the great thing about learning is that there's still so many things how we can innovate this, and every person in this audience and everybody can still innovate it. It's far from being what it should be, that it really makes our students and learners grow within not only their career but also as a person. And learning is from my perspective one of the key elements of being human, and leveraging everything that we can and doing this in a way that it is really the best personal experience is something that is, I think, really rewarding and exciting. And I hope that we will see many innovations along this. We are by far from the end of our kind of innovation potential and pipeline, and I believe that it will be rather a decade of great innovations in teaching, even more so than the last 10 years. So that is what I'm looking forward to. Nice.
Terrific. Well, I just want to say thanks. I've been really inspired. The conversation we had last week, conversation today, it's really inspiring. So thanks for sharing, your vision and your wisdom and your experiences with us and with the audience. And we're all going to be watching you continue to grow towards that over 1 million enrollments. And we're definitely rooting for you. It's the famous Mandela quote, right? Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So we're definitely cheering you on as you go over 1 million students, because we know IU is having tremendous impact. So thanks for your time, and take care.
Thanks.
Thanks
for having
everyone
me.
listening.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.